Hello everyone, welcome to the next round of competitive lists that got 5-0s that I think are actually interesting. This is going to be a long video. We got 16 different decks to talk about today. So this is going to be a bit. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. One of these decks I'm actually going to be playing for a video later on. So one of my Monday specials is going to feature a deck that's going to be talked about today. We'll get into that later. But if you guys like me doing this kind of content where I go digging through the leagues and the preliminaries to find sweet decks that maybe aren't meta, that are could be a decent competitive option for you, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe, and let me know down in the comments which one of these decks excites you the most, because that way I know what decks to look out for more if they come back up as another 5-0 or something. And like I said, smash that like button if you like this content, so I know that you guys want to actively see this kind of content. And let's get into it. All right, so first on our list is kind of a deck that's been around for a minute, and that is Auras, right? With Light Paws. It has Vanguard, which is a pretty resilient threat. We have Scout, and then we have the brand new Saiba Cryptomancer, which I'm going to be playing a variant of this for competitive Magic at one point. But overall, like, we have the traditional kind of Bant package, right? We have a blue, white, and green in this deck. We have a Warbriar Blessing, which is one of the best fight auras. So I really like this deck, and I think Cryptomancer is a good addition. I do actively wonder, I guess this is taking the slots for Skrelv, so I'm not sure if this deck should be playing Skrelv or not, but it definitely has a lot of sweetness in it. It has a lot of card draw as well, between Obsession and Staggering Insight, as well as this one gives you Scry, which is also kind of close to drawing a card. Sideboard wise, this deck adjusts its mana base to maybe cut, I don't know exactly, probably a waste or something for a Beseiju, which lets us get through hate cards, so that's pretty relevant. Portable Wolf is for the opponent's aggressive strategies. Get rid of the Llanowar Elves, hitting 2-drops and 1-drops in the mono white matchup. Slip Out the Back as a way to fight through Wraths. So you bring this in when you know the opponent has a lot of Supreme Verdicts, and you kind of want to just make your creature poof, be gone, and protect it. Spell Pierce is for the more like Ragdoll's mid-range, where they have removal spells, they have stuff like that, and you just want to leave up a single mana to actually deal with the interaction that you're facing. Damping Sphere is great against Lotus Field. No, that's basically it. Then we have Rest in Peace as a way to fight Grease Fang, graveyard-based strategy, stuff like that. And also, I mean, it kind of helps. I'm pretty sure there is some sort of enchantment synergies in here. Yeah, because we have this one, which, you get a bonus for Rest in Peace on the board with armor. And I'm assuming this also plays all the glitters, so they both get a bonus from that. So that is 4-color auras. This is a deck that I think is just awesome, and I'm glad to see Bogles being a part of Pioneer, because it's kind of, dying in Modern. Let's get into the second deck. Like I said, we got a lot to get through. Next on my list is Orzhov Midrange. So Shieldred, Wasteknot, Strangler, which is the reason why I have this as a sweet deck. This card is awesome. We have, of course, the pieces that, I'm not really a huge fan of, like Wandering Emperor, Shieldred, but at the same time, I gotta respect the fact that they're just a generically good card, right? We have Charming Prince. We do get to run a Companion in Yorion, which is kind of important. 33 lands is a decent number. We have Invasion of Tavada, which with a Elish Norn, we can get 2 things back, so that's kind of awesome. We have the best interaction from black. We also have the best interaction that's not black, aka multicolored or anything other than that. Vanishing Verse is just a very, very good. Now, we also have Displacer, which is kind of awesome, which is great with Companion, great with Prince. It's also pretty good with Spellbinder to push out Lotus Fields from comboing. We have Specialist for the grindy matchups like Rakdos Midrange, where they have a lot of removal. The Skyclave Apparition as a way to fight, basically load the ground decks. It also does, since it hits anything, it's kind of helpful even in non-aggro matchups, because it does get another opposing Shieldred, which is kind of nice. Sideboard, we have 4 Duresses we can bring out for the pushes against control, stuff that push isn't very good against. We have Pithing Needle to fight through a Karn the Great Creator, as well as, fights through Parhelion. We have Ray of Enfeeblement as a way to hate on Greasefang. Probably would just end up cutting the Vanishing Verse. No, probably Thoughtseize. Thoughtseize is just not actively good against Greasefang. And we have Unlicensed Hearse for Graveyard Hate. We have Redain to push out Wraths, push out pretty strong non-creature spells. Also, the backside does help slow down aggro decks, because now their damage is 1 less per each attack. So that is kind of nice. So both modes are kind of relevant. That is Orzhov mid-range, and it was done by Danny Bambino. I love it. The deck is pretty awesome. All these decks will be listed in the description below. It's going to be a very, very long description because, like I said, there's 16 of these things. So let's get into the next. So next on my list is actually the deck that I'm going to be playing for a Monday episode. This deck caught me off guard. It's very awesome. Like, it's an Itali deck. It has Golos. We have Cavalier. We have Servant to make our Itali have haste and ramp it down. We have Chandra. We have 4 Ugins. We have Cleansing Wildfire. Like, there's Feet, which is pretty awesome to get down. Probably a Ugin. It's kind of not work. It doesn't really work all that well with a Tally, because if you cast the Tally right after, you can't really get the 2 spells you find because they count as extra cast. So it kind of hurts. We have Vessel to ramp, Fable the Mirror Breaker, which is just the best card in Pioneer, hands down by a huge margin. Then we have a decent sized mana base with the Cleansing Wildfire package to make us ramp. Sideboard, we have Volley for Greasefang, Mono White Spirits. We have a Braid as a way to fight artifact-based strategies. Also can hit Parhelion as well as Chariot and the Greasefang itself. Bankbuster for the grinding matchups. Roast for Shieldred. Unlicensed Hearse, also pretty good against graveyard-based strategies. We have Thought-Knot Seer for combo, right? So if we're facing Lotus Field, we bring this in, cut down our curve, so that way we can just get rid of their best pieces out of their hand. Then we have a Chandra as a way to fight through control, because last thing we need is to cast a big Chandra or a big Ugin. It gets countered, so having an uncounterable game-ending threat is very good in that matchup. So like I said, this is the deck that I'm going to be playing for a Monday episode. So if you like this deck in particular, make sure you subscribe because you want to get alerted when this video drops. Next on my list is Boros Aggro with the Loxodon, Knight, Bushwhacker, Plarg, Burning Tree. We have a decent amount of 1-drops in this deck to just go full aggressiveness. Like, this deck is quite fast. Forbidden Friendship, Gleeful Demolition. We have only 1 Legion's Landing. I'm not sure if that's correct or not, but 18 lands is a pretty small amount, and we shouldn't really get flooded. Sideboard wise, we have Torbot's Crypt because we don't really want to devote mana to our Graveyard Hate. We have Rendering Volley as a way to fight through mono white, aggro, essentially the same stuff. We have Invasion of Gomacon to fight through Rafts, to push it off a turn or 2. Shieldred, probably, this is pretty good to make sure that they can't block with Shieldred. And then we have Wedding Announcement for the grinding matchups, which is also Rakdos mid-range. That is essentially the deck. It's kind of awesome. This deck is gaining a lot of traction as of late. I hope at some point this deck might be a tier 2 deck. Submitted by Ender W, we have Jeskai Ascendancy with Rona, Skrelv to protect, Gremlin as a faster way of infinitely comboing off. We have Thassa's Oracle as another alternative way. We have Reality Chip to help set up our draws along with combo off of their draws. Then we have Emery as a way to keep looting back Mox Amber from the graveyard if we have multiple. We have Helix to keep bouncing the Amber or Tormod's Crypt. We have setup pieces, Bitter Reunion to give our stuff haste if we're planning on going the aggro plan. Saheeli to make infinite 1/1s, also pretty relevant. 20 lands is where you kind of want to be. Jeskai Ascendancy, of course, which is the namesake card. We have Portable Hole, Volley for aggro and Greasefang and stuff like that. Silence to stop our opponent from interacting with the turn that we're comboing off. We have Surge of Salvation against Rakdos midrange, also stops Thoughtseize, which is quite relevant. Iconoclast to change up our game plan if we need to go, if we're expecting so much hate for Rona. We have Redain, as like I said before, both against big instant sorceries like Magnus Opus or stuff like that. Also, the backside is quite relevant against aggro decks to make sure they don't do that much damage to us. And that is Jeskai Ascendancy. It's a pretty awesome list. If you get, like I said, if you want to try this deck out, it's in the description. Let's get into the next. Next on my list is we have a 4-color elf deck by Avery Alder. Now this deck is more like a toolboxy style elf deck, which is more like Modern's version. We have Selfless Spirit we could tutor out. Glissa if we need to go aggro beats. We have Shaman of the Pact as a way to deal a lot of damage. And of course we have Record, Collected Company, all pretty good. Then of course we have Mistcaller as a way to fight through Neoform. We have Raven Fimblement to of course hit Greasefang. We have Mastrate we can, cord for. It's pretty good against the adventure cards as well as some other options. We have Max Vandal as our enchantment and artifact hate that exiles, so we can get rid of Parhelion forever, which is quite relevant. We have Revoker to stop Parhelion from being activated, also against Karn. We have Scavenging Ooze to eat up graveyards. Jailer as an alternative, depending on what matchup you're on. This is actually better. We have Archon of Emiria we could tutor out. Faith to protect our threats against Wrath. Then we have Sage for artifact and enchantment removal. Pylon to tap down our small threats. We have Yasharn as a way to fight through certain matchups. And we have Stain the Mine as a way to fight and eat the combo out of the opponent's deck. That is 4-color elves. Like, this deck is a toolbox deck. I'm glad to see toolbox decks are starting to form in Pioneer. A lot of our namesake meta decks are not toolboxy. They're just straight up either mid-range or combo related, and it's kind of boring. So glad to see something else come up. If this is your play pattern, make sure you check it out in the description. Let's get into the next. Next on my list is technically a archetype that is mainstream, but not in the Bant form. So normally it's just Selesnya Angels, but for some reason they are splashing some blue, which makes this a little bit more interesting. The blue splash is for Gahada, which lets you play Angels off the top of your library. Also for Lavinia, which can sacrifice and protect your threats, give them indestructible. So that's actually quite relevant against a Wrath or something like that. Of course, we still have Collected Company. We do not play Kayla's Reconstruction, so I guess we are getting rid of that component for Gahada as an alternative way to keep casting a bunch of stuff on top of our library, which also is still pretty decent. I do kind of actively wonder if this deck could just get rid of green and play, Orzhov and keep Kayla's Reconstruction over Coco, but Coco is better against control where it has its instant speed. We do it at the end of our opponent's turn. They probably counter it. We get to drop down some stuff from our hand. Sideboard wise, we do have Sanctuary for the Rakdos mid-range matchup. We have Portable Hole for aggressive decks like Mono White. We have Damping Sphere to fight through Lotus Field. We have Dovin's Veto. Also, it's pretty good against Lotus Field as well as Control. Then we have Hollowed Moonlight for the Troxa Neoform / Transmogrify matchups. We have Rest in Peace as a way to fight through graveyards. And then we have Guardian of the Faith, which helps against Wraths when they try to basically Ugin away our board, which is probably the best Wrath against Angels. But overall, pretty awesome deck. As again, this is also in the description. Let's get into the next. Next on my list is Golgari Midrange by Depton. This deck plays Shieldred, Sunslayer, which is arguably the best Golgari card, one of the best. We have Ooze for graveyard hate. We have Wayfinder. Pretty weird choice, but I'm assuming this deck plays Lotus Field of Ruin, but I guess it doesn't. So it doesn't have, I guess it has Boseiju, but other than that, we don't really have a way to destroy our own lands. So that is kind of a flavor loss right there. You do have 25 lands, which is pretty stock. We have Liliana and Realm Wren, which is pretty awesome planeswalkers. We have Fatal Push, the basic removal pieces, Ranger class for the matchups where we expect to go long. So it has a mixture of everything against other mid-range decks and against aggro. So pretty good overall. Sideboard wise, we have Duress for the control matchup, Pithy Needle as a way to fight through Karn, Terror Sunder. I like this card in general. It's pretty good against Parhelion and stuff like that, but also it gets rid of good creatures like the Worm by exiling them, which is better. We have Go Blink for control matchups, Necromentia as a way to fight through combo, Extinction Event against aggro, Ritual Soot against aggro, Thrun against control. So that is Golgari mid-range and Pioneer. I think this deck is actually pretty awesome. If I had a choice between playing this and Rakdos, I'd probably pick this version up. I think this deck has a pretty good shot of consistently giving you top 5-0s as well as winning GPs and stuff like that. So I like this list. I'm not exactly sold on the Wayfinder, but I would have to try them out. I have yet to do that. Let's get into the next list. Next on my list by Cute Chandra. It is Boros Hammer time with the Warrior package with Scamp, Charger, Loyalist. We have actually it's Goblins. Yeah, it's a Goblin sub theme with Warriors, which is kind of interesting. The reason why it's in here, it does play Fable the Mirror Breaker, which is kind of lame, but that is what it is. We have Strike to give our Warriors a shot, and yeah, I mean Horde Master is a Warrior, so that's kind of nice. We have Aid as one of the best Hammer time cards. Sideboard wise, we have 2 Dens. I'm not really sure what matchup this is for. I guess maybe there's a world where you want more lands. Yeah, so it seems like you bring Den of the Bugbear and Ringleader in the same matchup, so you anticipate cutting non-land cards for more lands to get a 4-drop down. We have Bushwhacker that we could bring in, and Goblin, Battlecry Goblin, if we want to be switching up from probably the Colossus Hammer package and go more on the traditional Goblin route, which is quite interesting as a concept. I think this deck is actually pretty sweet. If this interests you, like I said, check it out. Next on my list are Grixis mid-range. We have Harvester, which is stock, Bone Crusher, Kroxa. Where it gets spicy is the Nicobolus, which is actually just one of the coolest 4-drops for mid-range. We have Corpus Appraiser, which is one of the better reasons to be in blue. Invasion of Amacat is also pretty relatively good. The fact that it lets you draw a card, your opponent discards a card. And we have Push, Thoughtseize, of course, Drown in the Loch, which is a good reason to be in blue. And we also have Fable the Mirror Breaker, of course, 25 lands, which is pretty stock. We have Pithy Needle for Karn, Disdainful Stroke for mono green, more or less. Epic Downfall, which is, I guess, pretty good against mono white. We have Grasp for mono white and Greasefang. We have Bankbuster as a way to fight through other mid-range piles. We have Hearse for Greasefang, Event for aggro and mono green. We have Hostage Taker as a way to exile any kind of creature or artifact. Then we have Scared God for more grindy matchups that we want to, need a 5-drop to take over the game. And that is Grixis Midrange by Urks, which is a pretty big deck builder if you check out his Twitter page. So let's get into the next. Next on my list, we have Naya Midrange with Voice of Resurgence, Elvish Norn, and Modrak. So this deck plays Heartfire, which is kind of interesting. I don't really know if any deck actually plays that card. Chain of the Rocks, Wedding Announcement, Fable the Mirror Breaker. All relatively good cards. We also have Jetmir's Garden. So we have 5, 9. Okay, we have a lot of decent amount of mountains for this Chain of the Rocks. A lot of the decks I see that play Chain of the Rocks play 9. This is playing a lot more than that because it's like 13, right? Because we have 12 plus 1, yeah, 13 mountains, which should be more than enough to cover this Chain of the Rocks. So this deck, I am kind of actively wondering how this deck traditionally wins, I guess, by Chariot beats. Modrak is okay of a beat stick. Elvish Norn, which is the newest Elvish Norn, which I guess is okay. So I am kind of curious how this deck can consistently win. Sideboard wise, we have Rending Volley. You know the deal. It is for the same matchups, as well as Needle, Cinder Vine is arguably good against control, as well as it's okay against Lotus Field because of the fact that they take a damage for every spell they cast. We have Invasion to get rid of rafts, as well as other cards that, actively hate on our strategy. We have Hearse for graveyard hate. Archon of Emeria pretty good against Lotus Field. We have the Crowan War pretty good against Shieldred. Other decently chunky sized creatures that we kind of just need to get out of the way. So that is Naya Midrange by Oro, which is kind of a sweet deck. It's tokens, as well as, good overall mid-range pile. So let's get into the next. By King Harry, mono black vamping zombies. So zombies and vampires are both tribes that I'm kind of wondered why they have not got any kind of foothold on the meta. And I'm glad to see there is a zombie list out there is playing Shieldred for some reason, but I totally understand. But you have to do what you got to do to compete. But removal is pretty stock. Dark Salvation's just awesome. Liliana the Veil. So this deck has a lot of the best zombies in it. So I'm kind of excited to see zombies take some sort of foothold on the format and getting a 5-0. It's about time. Mana base, we have Castle Locklane, which is just the best utility land. Hive, Mutavault, 9 swamps, and 1 Takenuma. So it's pretty reasonable. We should have this untapped most of the time. Sideboard wise, we have Duress for control. We have Ray Enfeeblement for mono white, as well as Greasefang. Grasp for mono white and Greasefang. There might be some cases where, of course, this hits the Teferi. It also hits on Wandering Emperor, which is quite relevant. Bankbuster for the grindy matchups. And then we have Leyline of the Void for graveyard hate. So that way we don't have to pay mana for it. We can commit more to the board on turn 1, turn 2, without having to worry about dropping a Hearse or something. So it makes sense in an aggro deck to play a free spell like Leyline of the Void. That is mono black zombies for Pioneer, which is quite awesome. Check it out. All right, so next on my list is Rakdos Goblins by Scourge Altars, which is kind of cool. So the deck plays Firebrand, Battlecry, Snoop, Horde Master, Chain Whirler, Hobgoblin. The black splash is for Touch of Moonglove, which gives your creature +1/0 and Death Touch on a turn. Whenever a creature dealt damage by that creature dies, its controller loses 2 life. I'm not sure what matchup this is for, but it is a very interesting card. Call of the Death Dwellers to get them back. Works really good with Chain Whirler with Death Touch. 23 lands, pretty stock. Of course, we know there's Volley, there's a Braid. Epic Downfall exists for mono white, as well as Spirits. Any kind of small aggressive deck. Pile Driver for the blue matchups. We also have Unlicensed Hearse for graveyard hate. We have Frenzy for the grindy matchups like Rakdos Midrange. That is Rakdos Goblins. So that's kind of awesome. All right, next on my list, we have a sweet deck featuring Auron's Epiphany. This is not necessarily a deck I consider to be overly sweet. It's just interesting that it got a 5-0. Not necessarily, oh my god, this is a deck I want to actively just pick up, because I remember the Auron's Epiphany in Call Time Standard. Man, did I have a lot of unfun times with that. And of course, they pick up Fable the Mirror Breaker, which is just the best card in Pioneer. We have Behold the Multiverse, Divide by Zero, Volcanic Spite to set up our combo plan. Swery Disruption, Hazard, Impulse, Chandra, which lets us double copy Epiphany, which is quite awesome. It's not very good with Deluge because the second copy doesn't get you anything, but Behold the Multiverse is good there. Divide by Zero is really good because we get our Sciences and this deck is not playing Mascot Expedition, which is really the best thing to be doing with it. So that's kind of interesting. I'm not sure why. Because normally with Chandra out, you get 2 copies of Mascot Expedition. It's quite powerful. We have Shark Typhoon. It's pretty good. Just in general, against creature matchups, we can get a blocker down, trade. Against control, it's an uncounterable threat that can come down. We have a Summary Dismissal as a way to exile all spells on the stack. We have, of course, our Lesson, Mystical Dispute for blue. Brother's Hood Inn is pretty good against aggro decks. We have Ether Gust for the mono green matchup. We have Volley, of course, for Grease Fang, mono white, Spirits. So we got one more deck to cover. Actually, after looking at this, it was 15 list, which is still a very high number of decks. I realized one of them was another Boros aggro list. Same thing we just kind of covered earlier. We got one more to cover. So next on my list is Lotus Field Strict Proctor combo deck. It does not play interesting. So it does not play Broadback. It's more of a control deck, but has Strict Proctor in it. It has Dream Trawler, which is quite fun. It has 4 Teferis, 3 Emperors, which is just the best planeswalkers in the format. And we have a decent amount of, not really counter spells, but it's more of rafts type effects. So that's the other reason why I was actually, excited enough to try to showcase this list, is because it's not necessarily the boring control deck where all it does is counter your opponent's spells. Discontinuity does technically kind of do that. This deck is not really that kind of strategy. I do actively wonder if there could be a different route with this style deck. Jeskai, and we can maybe do Magma Opus with Gear Hulk as an alternative way. That could be some sort of sweet way of building this list, because this card is quite good, probably with Gear Hulk. So I would be interested in trying that as a 6 mana counter spell. But then again, at that point, you would just be playing the one that copies Gear Hulk, counter spells, bounces something, draws a card. Yeah, that card. So 26 lands, pretty reasonable. That's being staged to copy our Lotus Fields. Sideboard wise, we have Lantern of the Lost. For graveyard hate, we have Gust against Mono Green, Dovin's Veto against Blue White Control, as well as, I'm assuming it's also pretty decent against Lotus Field. We have Narset's Reversal to disrupt if our opponent's playing Burn. We have Rest in Peace for more graveyard hate. Dream Trawler, I'm not sure what world you're wanting 2 of these, but that's kind of interesting. We have Thought Distortion for the Control Mirror, so that's also pretty good since they can't counter it and they just dump all their counter spells on the floor, and we get to chuckle and laugh. So that is more or less blue-white Lotus Field for Pioneer, because all of these lists are down in the description. I hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you smash that like button so I know to keep doing these videos, because you guys like watching them. And until next time, hopefully you guys have a great rest of your day. Talk to you soon.